hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we
Hi
can hear you.
guys. How are we all doing today? I hope we're fine. We're still waiting for a couple of people to join in. A couple more people are joining in, so we're just trying to. Yeah, a lot of people are still joining. So a lot of people are going to. I'm trying to make sure that Dami session does not start before everyone can join in. Hi, Dami. You guys, Dami is my mommy.
Lord. I'm so sleep deprived. God.
So sorry. In fact, I have I had a migraine all through the night, and I could not sleep because of the migraine. But yeah, we
Oh,
move.
sorry about that.
Thank you. So hi guys. Hi. Let me do a quick checkup. Shemi logo Bamidele. Hi. How are
Take
you
your
doing?
time, oh. No rush, please.
You guys, quick quick rundown or quick memo. Yeah, Dami is ready for you people. So
That
like.
means not ready. Oh. That means still editing slides.
Oh my god. If you follow Dami on Twitter, yeah, you see how much she's ready to give us bad news in this
Guys.
sector. So get ready.
It wasn't mouth.
Get ready.
Oh
So
god.
guys, okay, so wait, before we start. Hi success. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Hi, yourself.
Hi, how's your day going?
Very, very well. And about to
Thank
get thanks to this training.
hmm. Thank God.
So what did he say?
He said he's about to get blessed, right? Did you say blessed?
Lord, guys. Oh
I'm about
god.
You get,
Guys, I might just start
that means
sleeping during this session.
get
I'm not
ready
even
for the hype.
joking.
Get ready for the hype. Hi Felix, how you
Oh
doing?
god.
Felix, can you hear us? Hi, how you doing? How's your day going? Thank you for
Guys,
bearing me witness.
been working on my slides since 6:30 last night.
Gang, gang.
Guys, you guys are so going to be disappointed. I'm so sorry in
You guys,
advance.
let me just tell you, that means disappointment is is our mind blowing. So like, don't even pay attention to what she's saying.
God.
So, Eniola, hi, how are you? What's your expectation for today's class also?
There's no expectation, just vibes, you guys.
Hi, Eniola, can you hear us?
Hello.
Hi, how
Hi.
are you?
I'm fine.
How's your day going?
I did it. My
Good.
day was good. Yeah.
So, what's your expectation for today's class?
I said I said something enlightening like the last class. I believe there's more to learn in this
Mm.
bootcamp and there's more to extraordinary learning. So I want something extraordinary. I'm looking for extraordinary.
Guys,
Thank you very much for that word extraordinary because that's what it's gonna be.
I
Yeah.
It's
think my
gonna
computer
be
is tired. My computer is hanging. Like, my computer is so over this.
Oluwa will not shame us. So
In Jesus' name.
Okwe is saying in the chat section that this session is devs going to be lit.
You
So
guys, you
we are
guys.
ready to be lit up by you there. So we're ready for today's class, guys. So Dumi is going to be taking the stage now. But first, a
Right
quick
now,
intro. Let me do an intro for you so that you can see
you
prepare.
take your time, bro. Take. I'm still editing slides. I'm not even joking. I wish I was joking.
Okay, so okay, a lot of people are still joining, and a lot of people are joining on YouTube also. Okay, so okay, um, let me. Okay, a couple of people are on YouTube. Great! Oh, I'm so excited. Um, so let me give you guys a backstory. Into first of all, let me give you my personal backstory of Dami. When I started off in design, I was always hearing of this dooms. I'm like, who is this dooms? So like a friend of mine, and funny how she went to my school, Covenant University, and a friend of mine was now telling me that okay, Dooms studied economics in C2 and everything, that like she's one design homie and everything. I was like, I love it, you know, love to meet her and all. Then I think I slid into your DM one time to tell you like, yeah, I slid into your DM on WhatsApp, tell you how much I really appreciated your work and everything. Why you excelling me?
You're raising expectations. You're supposed
So
to be raising
now let me tell you.
expectations.
So there's this group chat that we are on, yeah, and me always comes to give us pressure. Like she will just say, "How many articles have you guys read this week? How many? What did you learn about design this week, guys?" And me, I will just be mute because I will just be like, "Wow, well, for who no read anything this week, oh." But that's how this is how Dami is intentional about the design community. That's one thing I could take from her. That how she's intentional about seeing people around her grow, especially if you're a designer, and how she's always willing to help you. Like Dami is one person that I can say she's just a text away, and she'll reply you. Okay, so now let me give you the professional backstory. Dami is a user experience researcher at PagerDuty. By the way,
Okay, now I'm at Webflow, yeah.
she's
Sorry.
not.
Just wanted to just adjust that.
Oh my
Um
god.
I'm gonna keep quiet.
I used to that. We want to be like her when we grow up, including me. So Dami now works with the famous Webflow. Good. I can see what you're doing for others. Thank you. So, and she handles research, user experience research at Webflow, I guess. And she works with product teams to validate product ideas. She also evaluates the user experience. And she's another. Now, let me give. She also has a podcast. That was how I first initially knew about her. Also, her podcast is so funny, guys. You guys should check out her podcast. I think I'll drop the link after our session today. She has an amazing podcast, and she says she studied. She's an undergraduate degree. She has an undergraduate degree in economics, and she loves yam. She's a troublemaker. I'm sure you can see it on her face. She's a troublemaker, and she loves adventure. She loves to paint also, and she carries Jesus on her head. So
I'm a
that is
troublemaker.
damning for you guys. So I hope you're ready now.
You still have more introduction because
Okay, so let's hear from everybody. Um, Dare, I know Dare was in the last class. So Dare, can you tell me how you enjoyed last class, and what you are expecting from this class?
Yeah. Um, Good evening, everybody.
Hi.
Um, yeah, I really enjoyed last class. First of all, I've been trying to get Darren to actually teach me to be my mentor.
Wow.
And coincidentally, she was the first person we had. So, I mean, I really, it was like a miracle for me. Yeah. And I'm not someone that actually read a lot because I actually signed up to UX Planet to read articles. So when it comes to like the principles about user interface, those heuristics and all of that, I was so glad that she could break it down instead of me going through all those, going to Medium to go and read them. And yeah, so I look forward to what Dami has up. I actually saw Dami's tweets saying
Like,
Mm-hmm.
she not said
now
anything,
in
man.
yeah, that
Like,
she's
she
now
not
with
said
Webflow.
anything.
I'm like, guy,
Yeah.
man, these people are now like product designers in Nigeria is now like, so and then she's here also. So it's like you're getting people I really want to actually meet. So yeah, hope
Lovely.
yeah, I hope to learn a lot from Dami today. Thank you very much, Bethel.
Me? Thank God. Okay, let's also hear from Okpe. Forward Okpe, not Okpe Ojulami. I think that's Okpe's here. Yeah. So after this Okpe forward, then we'll have Okpe Ojulami.
Okay, and after that, I'll be ready. So,
Ready? Okay, great. Okay, you're in a noisy area, fine, no problem. And let's go with Okpe Ojulami. Hi Okpe. Okwe is our able community manager. Like I've never been more happy to work with somebody in my life. Like the way I work with Okwe. Okwe makes work stressless for me. Before he comes up, I just let me hype him a little bit. So Okwe, can you hear me? Ah, have you left the call out of shyness? Okay, I don't think he's here. Okay, let's have Victory. Hi, Victory.
Hi,
Hi, I
Bethel.
know you. Hi. Hi.
Hi.
So can you tell us your expectation for today's class?
My expectation for this class is to gain extra knowledge, broaden my mind. I like to learn new things. I'm not a UX designer per se, but but I know quite a lot about it. I want to learn more. So yeah.
Lovely. Here for it. So
all right, I'm ready.
take the stage.
Dun, 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 dun. Okay. Hi everyone. My name is Dami, and I am a user researcher at Webflow. Today I'm going to be talking about um user experience design, but it's going to be a lot of different things. So I'm just trying to figure out how to share my screen. Just 1 minute. Come on, come on, come on. Let's get it moving. So my computer is like it's been working for the past almost 24 hours. So um okay. All right. Let me share my screen.
Okay, so let me quickly add, guys, to see Dami's screen, make sure you click on the presentation. Like it will say her name, Dami, Oludami, like her full name, then presentation by the side. Just make sure you pin it. Okay. And once you pin it, you'll be able to see the her slides well, because I think that's an issue we had in the last class. So I just give you guys a quick tutorial on how to see our slides. Okay. Now, Dami.
Okay. Well, it's taking its time. Everything is taking its time today
I
because
can
every
see
is like that. So okay, we're finally here. Glory to God. Okay. All right. So oh, no, I didn't move it though. What's happening? It's really slow today. Of course, it's going to be very annoying. Wow, it's really going to happen for every single screen. I'm so sorry, you guys.
Yeah, it's currently saying click to exit full screen. The laptop is slow, right?
Yeah, it's really slow. Can you see the full thing?
Yeah, I can see the full thing, but it's still saying click to exit the full screen.
Wait, wait. That's weird.
I think you should stop presenting and try again.
That's going to take like 2 years, man. All right, just give me 1 minute, please. I used the wrong computer, man.
Okay, so on on YouTube, um, I can see my friend here, Jadi. Jadi is the one that's going to be taking us on UX writing, and she says hi.
Hi, Jade. Hopefully your computer is not doesn't do this to you during your time.
Oh my gosh, she's so scared. I'm happy she's here.
Okay, let's try this again. Come on, come on. Okay. Can you
So
guys see my
guys,
screen?
yes, we can.
Okay. All right. Oh, twice. All right. So, okay. Hi, everyone. Thank God it's finally working. So the topic for today's session is there's more to design than meets the eye. So the entire point of this session is to take a deeper dive into user experience design. There are a lot of very fundamental things that Ooh, I probably shouldn't have done that. There's a lot of really fundamental things that we talk about when we talk about design, and a lot of things that we leave out. So the entire point of this session is to talk about a lot of those things that are not really talked about to 5 different parts. We have I click on it. I clicked on it, right? Okay, so now we went too far. All right. So the first module, we're going to be talking about design thinking, what design thinking is and what it's not. In the second module, we're going to be talking about psychology of design. We're going to be talking about how we can use some principles of psychology to design better products. In the third module, we're going to be talking about service design. Now, service design is something that a lot of people have kind of heard about, and I know some people have reached out to me that they're really curious about it. So we're going to talk a bit about service design and about why it's important, why we need it, and what we can, do with it, basically. Then in the fourth module, we're going to be talking about product thinking. And in the fifth module, we're going to be talking about user experience research, which is my area of specialization. And then in the sixth module, we're going to be just like having room for questions. So each module is going to take about 15 to 20 minutes. The goal is to stay under 15 minutes so that one or two people can ask questions before we move to the next module. So it's going to be a lot of information, just a disclaimer. So if you have any questions, just just note it down. You can reach out to me after. We can have like an extended session after where I go through the questions and help you answer your questions. But I think a lot of the things here are really detailed, so you should have enough knowledge to understand, like you have enough knowledge to move forward. So module one, design thinking, what it is and what it's not. So I'm sure you've heard about design thinking, that chances are that you yourself have thrown the phrase around a couple of times. I personally don't like talking about design thinking, because I think that the term has been bastardized. People would just throw small sticky notes here and there, and next thing you know, they'll be like, oh yeah, we use design thinking methodology, which is obviously not the case. So in this session, we're going to be talking about actual design thinking, right? Not the weird things that have been, sold, not the buzzword, right? We're going to be talking about design thinking, what it really is. Before we start, I think a very good place to start is by talking about what design thinking is not. So design thinking is not empathy. Empathy is a part of design thinking, but you cannot sum design thinking up into empathy. There is more to design thinking than that. Next, design thinking is not a linear process. It's basically not even a process, right? And when I explain it, you won't understand why I say so. Number three, design thinking is not design, right? It has to do with design, but design thinking is not equals to design, right? Um, Four, design thinking is not post-it notes. So it's not those post-it notes or design artifacts that you create. It's not your empathy map. It's not your personas. All those things are cute and they're like super useful, but that's not the core of design thinking, right? And design thinking is not a theory. It's not just something that you can read up and expect to be able to practice with ease, right? And I'll explain why that's the case. So I've said a lot of things, and I feel like I've debunked a lot of like thoughts around what design thinking is. So I'm sure somebody is wondering, like, okay, Dooms, like, if all those things are not design thinking, then what is design thinking? Well, I'm glad you asked. Uh, wait, I went back. Sorry. So Ideal's Tim Brown. Ideal is a really big design agency in the world, super respected. And Ideal's Tim Brown defined design thinking as a human-centered approach to innovation that draws from the designer's toolkits to integrate the needs of people, the possibilities of technology, and the requirements for business success. So look at those three things, at like the four things I highlighted. So I highlighted human-centered approach. Okay, five things. I highlighted the designer's toolkit. I highlighted the needs of the people, possibilities of technology, and the requirements for success. So basically, what he's saying here is that designers have a set of tools that we use to practice design, right? So design thinking is basically us adapting those tools in a human-centered manner to innovate on problems in a way that is technologically feasible, in a way that is viable for the business and desirable to the humans that use the product, right? So what we're talking about here basically is what is popularly called the sweet spot of innovation. So as we begin to dig deeper, you see that what we think is design thinking is not design thinking at all. So design thinking is not about churning out visual aesthetically pleasing designs. It's not about putting sticky notes everywhere, right? It's about what goes through your head as you go along that process, right? As you go along that problem solving process, right? So let's go a bit deeper. What is the sweet spot of innovation? The sweet spot of innovation is basically the Zen product. If I go back to the other slide, you see it's like a Venn diagram. So it's kind of like the Zen point or the Zen spot for a product. So it's basically the point at which the three key sets, so the three key sets is the human, the business, and the technology where they intersect, right? So the first is desirability. So do the humans that could potentially use your product, do they desire your product? The second is feasibility, and the third is viability, right? So desirability is the part where a lot of people tend to focus on, a lot of designers specifically, right? So in the desirability phase, we're asking the question, are we solving the right problem, right? We're asking, is this going to add value? And we're also asking, do people really want this, right? So the core focus of your core focus in that phase is understanding user and understanding if what you are building aligns with those needs, right? Which is basically what we call empathize, like the empathize portion in design thinking, right? Which is basically the core of user experience design, right? So the second part is feasibility. So in feasibility, we're asking the question, do we have what it takes to build this? Will this innovation strengthen our business? So what you're basically doing is you're trying to assess, okay, do I have the resources to build this thing, right? Do I have the technological resources? Do I have the mental resources? Do I have the know-how? Do I have all those things? Will I have to outsource it? Would I have to, get hire new people, get experts? Like, what exactly do I need to, for this to be feasible, right? Technically, right? And then the third part is viability. So we're asking the question: does this scale? Does this contribute to long-term business growth? And I'm going to take a step back and just let you guys know that we're going to be talking a lot about business here, and we're going to talk a lot about product here. And that's just because the goal of, like, as a good designer, you should understand the business. Like, you need to understand the business, you need to understand how the business works, you need to understand, like, the feasibility, like technological constraints. You can't just go around and be designing like aesthetically pleasing interfaces. There's a place for that, right? But there's also a place for, taking a step back and making sure that you understand business goals, that your designs are aligned with the goals of the business, that you're helping the growth team and the marketing team, whatever, or the sales team, achieve the goals that they need to achieve, right? So you're not working as an isolated person, you're working together with your team, right, to achieve a common goal, your common business goal, right? So we're going to be talking a lot about business here. Okay, so I'm going to go back. So, where did I stop? I think I stopped viability. Okay, so in viability, we're asking the question: does this scale? Does this contribute to long-term business growth? So here you're thinking about your business model fits, and I'm going to explain what that means later on. And you're trying to understand if the business model that you have aligns with how people want to interact with your solution. So you're thinking about profitability, you're thinking about sustainability, right? It's one thing to design a product right now, right, and just kind of leave it. It's another thing to think about the future of the product, right? So you need to think about sustainability of the product. You need to think about sustainability of the solution, of the idea that you're trying to build, right? You don't just, and profitability, it needs to make money for the business, right? You can't just be like, fine, your designs are pretty and your designs are, functional and usable, but is it contributing to profit? Is it making the company more profitable? Those are the things that you need to really, really think about as a designer, right? So from this, like from what I've said so far, you see now that that design thinking, what you think is design thinking, isn't really design thinking, right? And you see that there's more to user experience design that meets the eye, right? So it's not really, it's not about just training out aesthetically pleasing designs, right? So you can't limit product design to visual design. I see a lot of people make that mistake, right? They limit product design to visual design, and then when they are given a problem, they don't really know how to go from a problem to a solution. When they have an idea, they don't know how to execute that idea and turn it into a solution. Those are very, very important skills for you to have as a designer, right? It's not enough for you to be able to come up with features. It's not enough for you to be able to design. You need to understand the fundamentals of user experience design. You need to understand the business. You need to understand the market, right? So yeah, okay. So from this, like from what I've said so far, you see that design thinking is not the toolkit, right? The design toolkit, the brainstorming session, the empathy mapping, the personas, they're just a means to an end, right? The end is the sweet spot. So I'm going to go back to the slide. The end is the sweet spot of innovation, right? The end is not your beautiful design. The end is the sweet spot of innovation. So what you're doing is that with whatever it is you're building, you're trying to make sure that you reach that point, right? So let's go a bit deeper into what design thinking is, right? Like I already said, this is a lot to user experience that meets the eye. It's not just about training out aesthetically pleasing design. There's more to it, right? So this is a very, very common oversimplification of design thinking. Go from empathize to define to ideate to prototype to test and all those kind of things, right? And there's nothing wrong with it, but in my experience, I noticed that there's more to the design thinking process. You can't just simplify design thinking to this, right? So this is how people have oversimplified design thinking. in the emerging economies like like in Nigeria, I've noticed that the design thinking process is different. You start from define, you go to ideate, and then the rest is vibes and inshallah. Right. And that's something that we actually need to fix, right? It's normal for emerging economies to some extent, but I see that a lot of people are getting comfortable there, right? You need to go beyond that. You need to go beyond the vibes and inshallah. There is more to design thinking than that, right? So for to me, this is like a more accurate depiction of what design thinking is in the real world, right? And I would even argue that there's some stuff like missing here, right? So what you're looking at is very complex and very overwhelming. That's how you know it's real, right? Sometimes we tend to like we want to always oversimplify things, and we when we do that we miss some of the most important things. So I'm going to walk you through this entire craziness, right? So the starting point is your problem space. So you need to understand the problem space, and to do that you need to understand your user needs. You need to empathize with them, but it also requires you to understand context, right? Understanding user needs is not enough, right? There are a lot of moving parts to it. You need to understand the target markets. You need to understand their mental models. You need to understand their behavior, their environment, their capabilities. You need to understand what is technologically feasible. You need to understand business goals. You need to understand the vision of the business. You need to understand what your business model looks like. You need to understand how like your product fits into that, right? So having all these things in mind, it improves your approach to problem solving, right? So once you're done with that, the next thing, once you have some solid direction on where to go next, the next thing you want to do is you want to define the problem, right? So you want to define the value proposition, and you want to scope out the problem, scope out the timeline, identify the resources you have, and how you like intend on tackling the problem, right? So once you've done that, you're moving to the ideate phase, and there's like an entire loop there, right? So you ideate, you prototype, you test, then you ideate again, you prototype, you test, and you just kind of continue doing that until you get to a good enough spot to show it to people, right? What you're testing here is not specific. It's not really design. I personally like to call it a concept, right? So it's just basically an idea. Like you have an idea, like, and then you just test it out. Like you prototype it, you test it out, right? And when I say prototype, it's not really like making everything clickable. It can be a paper prototype, right? It can be just like mock-ups and like having people walk through the mock-ups, right? So it doesn't have to be really crazy, right? And this ideation phase, you're doing the test with your end users, right? And you're just trying to get feedback, trying to get feedback until you get to a point where you think, okay, I think we've solved this problem to the best of our abilities within the constraints that we have, right? Because you will always have time and resource constraints, right? So you need to get to a point where you stop and you just kind of start, building things out from there, right? And before we move on to the next phase, I think it's very important to know that there's an overlap between some stages, and people tend to skip some specific stages, but having an idea of the entire thing is very, very important, right? So the next step is critique. So you share your designers or your idea with your product designer, another product designer, your team, or with your product manager. I hate sharing things with product managers. I personally have beef with product managers. I love them, but I also hate them. It's a love-hate relationship because you can just give them one thing. Next thing you know, you can sleep and wake up, and next thing you know, you see like 500 comments on your designs or 500 comments on your research plan. And I just like, guy, like I'll just show you for courtesy's sake. Because anyway, that's besides the point. The point is that the critique phase, you're sharing it with another designer, with somebody that understands, or your product manager, or your engineering lead, or whatever, somebody that understands the context of the product, right? And so they give you internal feedback. And I feel like a lot of skip this process. And internal feedback is very, very important. In my experience, I noticed that internal feedback is useful for because the people that will be critiquing your work, they have like a very solid understanding of the business and of the business goals, right? So they can point out some certain things that you're overlooking. They can point out some of the biases you have, and they can help nudge you in the right direction, right? So that's super important. So once the critique is done, then you can elaborate, right? And in elaborating, what you're doing is that you're fleshing things out. So this is where your information architecture comes into place. Your content structure and I don't know architecture comes into place. We're thinking about the entire flow. We are thinking about the copy, the UX writing. We're thinking about all those things, right? We'll also start to think about branding too, how you can incorporate the branding into the design that you're doing. Then the next phase, is like where you kind of implement the design and then you systemize things. So systemizing is where we begin to talk about design systems and brand guidelines if you're a smaller company, right? But all those things are like design ops related things, and the entire point is just to make sure that things are uniform. And then the final stage is that you optimize, right? So you just continuously fine tune the product as time goes on to keep it relevant, to make sure that your product is evolving as your customers and their needs evolve, right? So that's just basically it. This is design thinking. If we really, really deep it, this is design thinking because it covers every aspect. It covers the aspect of feasibility of the technology, of the humans, and of the business, right? So you're not just facing the humans or your users at the expense of the business and of the technology, right? You're doing every single thing, right? So what's really important, right? The most important things when it comes to design thinking and being a designer is problem solving, right? We can't overemphasize the importance of problem solving in design thinking, right? It's the crux of it, right? The next thing is human centeredness, right? So human centricity is like that extra layer that requires you to design for the humanity of people. So you're not just designing with them, you're not just designing okay, the difference between human centeredness and user centeredness is that as a user you're thinking of them as like a person that uses your product, but as a human you're thinking of them as a human first, like as a human being with feelings and emotions first, and then you're thinking about them as somebody that uses your product. So you're putting their humanity first, and your goal is to appeal to the humanity of the person, right? The third thing is creativity and innovation. The entire point of design thinking is for you to innovate, and it makes you like more creative, right? Like it empower. I won't say it makes you, but it empowers you to be more creative in your problem solving, right? Then the fourth thing is informed decision making, right? So we know that, I mean, my mom always used to tell me this. She always say that, knowledge is power, right? And that's very true, especially when it comes to design, because we have like the challenges we face today are just like so big. And if you are not informed, you would run into issues, right? So you need to keep yourself updated on what's going on in the design industry, but also what's going on within your company, what happened in the past research they done, the reason why they did the things they did, the reason why they made some decisions that they made, and all those kind of things. Right? You have to make sure that you have information, because the more information you have, the better decisions you can make. Then the fifth thing is to iterate. Just continue to iterate until you cannot iterate anymore, until you maxed out your constraints, until you maxed out your time, until you maxed out your resources. You just continue to iterate, right? Then the sixth thing is adaptability. You need to be able to adapt to situations. You need to be able to adapt to circumstances. You need to be able to adapt to different teams. You need to be able to have conversations with people outside your team. You need to be able to talk to the support team. You need to be able to talk to the sales team. You need to be able to talk to customer service. You need to be able to talk to a lot of people, right? So um it's not just limited to your design team or the engineers. You need to be able to go outside your team and have meaningful conversations, because like it's usually from those people that you have like very, very interesting insights, right? So the seventh thing is context. Context is key. Make sure that you always have context. Don't take a problem without understanding it. Don't attempt to solve a problem without understanding the context behind the problem, right? It's very, very important. And the eighth thing is to practice design thinking, right? So I've said a lot of things about design thinking, but at the end of the day, design thinking cannot really be taught, right? I mean, you can read up about it, but if you want to really, really become better at design thinking, you need to practice, right? You need to solve problems, right? Because I mean, me personally, I don't remember the theory behind design thinking. If you stop me on the road and be like, "Oh, Dooms, what are the 5 steps in design thinking?" I won't be able to answer you. But if you give me a problem, I'm able to solve it, right? Because I've trained myself to solve problems, right? I've trained myself to think like that. So I don't really, really need to know the meat of the theory. I already know how to do it, right? So the easiest way to become better at thinking like a designer or become a better designer is to practice, right? Practice, 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 right? So what was the point of this? I could have just like not oop, oop, oop. I could have I honestly didn't really have to, talk about design thinking. I feel like everybody already knows what I'm talking about. But I just wanted to show you guys that there is more to design thinking that meets the eye, right? So it's very important for you to understand what it truly means, right? So when you're saying, okay, I use design thinking to solve this problem, like you need to ask yourself, did I think about the viability? Did I think about the feasibility? Did I think about the feasibility, viability, and desirability, right? Did I think about all those things? If you're not thinking about all those 3 things, then you're not using design thinking. And that's just what it is, right? So don't buy into that narrative. Don't buy into that narrative that, like, yeah, like empathize, ideate. Yeah, those things are important, but they're just means to an end. The end you want to get to is the sweet spot of innovation. And we as designers, we have a role to play in getting our products there, right? So that's kind of why I really wanted us to have this conversation, because I don't want us throwing the term design thinking around like a buzzword. I want us to really, really understand what it's about. So I hope this session made sense to you. I know I said a lot of things, but I hope you're able to learn at least one thing from this session. So I'm going to shut up for what time is it? I'm going to shut up for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, I guess, to see if anyone has any questions before I move on to the next module.
Hello,
Hi,
Hi.
Amelia, we can hear you.
hello.
Amelia,
Hi.
we can hear you. Please ask your question.
Yes, you talked about understanding your problem space and knowing who your target audience is.
Mm-hmm.
But then your target audience might come from different backgrounds in terms of age, in terms of educational level, in
Mm-hmm.
terms of, let me say, comfort with technology, in terms of physical constraints. That's why you have
Mm-hmm.
like a wide variety of target audience. How do you come to a common ground as a designer?
So that's a very, very interesting question. So what I personally do is that I focus on the job to be done, right? The job, and I'm going to talk about that very soon. So if you're focusing more on what they're trying to do as opposed to who they are, you would find some common ground. It's kind of like a water bottle, right? I'm an adult and I have a water bottle. My sister, I have 2 sisters. They're like 8 and 10. They also have water bottles. What they want from the water bottle is to drink water, right? That's the central meeting point, right? So if you're designing for that job of drinking water, you can neglect the demographics for in the beginning, right? And this water bottle, it serves me, it serves my sister, right? Because the job that I want to use it for is to drink water. And because I can drink water with it, it doesn't really matter if I'm old or young, right? So in the earlier stages, your focus should be on understanding the job, and then on and who the core job performer is, and then moving from there. Personas are super useful in understanding demographics, but I find that focusing more on the job that they're trying to perform first, and then focusing on their demographics after, can give you a solid start points. Like it can allow you reach that midpoint quicker. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Hi. So
Hi.
I have a question. Okay, so far from the design thinking that you have been talking about, I
Mm,
somehow feel like it takes a long time to complete, like the
mm,
whole design thinking. So, in the case of where you have probably they give you a project to do, and the client is like he wants you to come up with a design for his product in maybe like 2 weeks,
mm.
and so how do you like fit in the design thinking to be able to meet up with maybe that short period of time? Because I don't know, it seems like a long time to go through the whole process critically. So how do you manage to do it in a short time and do it
Okay,
well?
so I'm going to answer that question. Hold that question. I have some modules. Like I have I have like three more modules where I'm going to tackle those questions. If you still have the question after, then you can ask it. Are we
Okay.
cool? Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions? 10:45.
Hi, good evening.
Hi.
Yeah, okay, my name is Chinedu.
Hi, Chinedu.
So in the event that a client doesn't actually understand his or her business or whatever it is he's trying to build,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like okay, maybe they've actually built this software before or maybe
Mm-hmm.
an application before, and they've had issues with it, but they really don't understand the particular issue they've had with it. Do you
Mm-hmm.
understand? So how do you get to understand? How do you get the client to explain what the business does if the client doesn't even understand what the business
Okay.
does?
So that question is a question that I would also tackle very soon. But the short answer is to ask them what problem they're solving, right? So I think a mistake that a lot of us make is that we don't focus on problem solving. Like we don't start from the point of problem solving. We're starting from the point of okay, excuse me, oh this is the solution, and this is the solution, and we're trying to improve the solution. And you're doing that without having a solid understanding of what problem they're trying to solve. If you there's something I'm going to be showing you in the coming modules where you would be able to pull out, it's called a UX canvas, a lean UX canvas. You can pull up that canvas. There are a lot of questions there, and try and answer those questions with the clients, right? And it will give both of you clarity, first of all, and then you help align you guys, right? So there are a lot of tools out there that you can use to understand what the client is doing. Like, and there's the lean UX canvas, there's also the business model canvas, which like I'm not really talking about because it's too business centric. And the focus of the business model canvas is on understanding the value proposition, on understanding the way they are generating revenue, the way they are distributing their product, and all those other things, right? So okay, so I'm going to address that in the coming modules. Okay, I don't really have. Okay, let me try and move to the next. Can you guys still see my screen? I hope you still can. Yeah, silence so as
Yeah,
in
we
yes.
do. Yes, we
All
can
right,
see the screen.
cool. Thank you so much. I didn't realize how much talking I was going to be doing today. Um, okay, so next we're going to talk about the psychology of design. Let's do this. Okay, so the psychology of design. Again, there's a lot to design that meets the eye. Design is very multifaceted, right? There are a lot of sides to it, right? And I think one side that is very, very underexplored by designers is the psychology of design, right? So I'm going to assume zero knowledge for everything I'm talking about. I'm assuming zero knowledge. So I'm going to be defining every single thing, right? So what is psychology? Psychology is the scientific study of the mind and behavior, right? So psychologists generally seek to study and understand mental processes, brain functions, and behavior. So they study the mind, how it works, and how it might affect behavior, basically. So why is understanding psychology important, right? Okay, actually, let's take a step. Let's talk about design psychology first. So, what is design psychology? Design psychology is basically leveraging the principles of psychology in design, right? The longer definition is that, design psychology is the combination of neuroscience, cognitive psychology, social psychology, human computer interaction, and it combines all those things in a way that helps understand human behavior through the lens of user experience design, right? So why is this important? Why is psychology important? So we know that we're designing products for humans, right? They're users, they're humans, right? Before they are users, they are humans, and that's something I'm going to be emphasizing a lot, right? We need to start appealing to the humanity of the people that we're designing products for, right? So either we're designing whatever it is we're designing, we're either designing it for to be appreciated by humans, or to be used by humans, or to be understood by humans, right? So humans find their way into like anything design related. And I think that's why understanding psychology is so important, because understanding the way the human mind works and what drives human behavior is super important in understanding humans, right? Since like the human mind and human behavior are the fabric of humanity. What I originally wanted to talk about was about dopamine and habituation. So basically, how you can help build habits through design. But I'm going to just keep that in my pockets because it's going to take longer than 15 minutes. So maybe I'll talk about it in next week's session because I know I still have one more session left, right? But I want us to talk about some laws first. Now, there are a lot of laws, there are a lot of design laws, but I'm only going to be talking about 5 design laws because I don't have time. But these are some of the more important laws I think could be potentially useful to us as designers. All right, so let's go. Okay, we're going to talk about the 5 principles of design. The first law is Hicks' law. So Hicks' law is around information synthesis and presentation, right? So the law states that the time it takes to make a decision increases with the number of complexity of the choices available. In layman English, what that means is that the more choices that you present a user with, the longer it takes for them to make a decision, right? So how can we apply this law to our daily designs? It's very simple. Just reduce the number of stimuli that you give the users, right? If you reduce the number of stimuli, then the users get to make like decisions quicker, right? So this law is super important to us as designers because sometimes we tend to cram a lot of information on our pages. We tend to just feed the user all information because they need the information, right? But simplicity is key, right? So we need to make our interfaces as simple as possible so that your users can take the shortest time possible to achieve their goals, right? So an example is just this remote control. I'm sure we've all seen these really weird ass remote controls. These are actually like real life, like people actually do this to their remote controls because there are a lot of things there that they don't use. There are a lot of things there that are just useless, right? So they just covered everything that is useless and focused on the more important things, right? And if you Google, I forgot to add the picture. If you Google Apple TV's remote, it only has like 3 or 4 buttons, right? Very simple, very straightforward, right? So there's an acronym by the US Navy called KISS. It means keep it simple, stupid. I like it because it's just very, very weird, right? But let that be your motto as you design, right? And we're talking about Hicks law, so I think it's very important for us to talk about cognitive overload or cognitive load, right? So I'm sure you probably heard the phrase cognitive load or cognitive overload in the past, right? So cognitive load is basically the total amount of effort that is required to make to complete the task. Sorry. So you can think of it as like the processing power or mental effort it takes for your users to interact with the product, right? So if you relate that to a computer, computers have processing powers too, right? And if you max out the computer's processing power, computer shuts down, right? So what you want to do is that you want to make sure that you're not overloading the user. You want to make sure that they don't need more than they don't need more processing power to comprehend the information on your platform than they have available, right? So the human brain, you can liken that to the computer processor, the computer's processor, right? So when the cognitive load is high, like the user suffers, right? And tasks become very difficult and it takes time, right? And that can really, really frustrate people, right? So simplicity is key. The next law is Miller's law, right? And so Miller's law predicts that the average person can only keep 7 ± 2 items in their working memory. For people like me, because I forget things a lot, it's less. It's very, very less, right? But people have misinterpreted this law to mean that you can't have more than 7 things on a page, or you can't have more than 7 options in a menu. That's not what the law is saying, right? Some even call it the magical number, which is also not what the law is. There's no magic in the law, right? The best way to implement the Miller's law in design is to chunk things, so to put things in chunks, right? So chunking it is basically the act of visually grouping related information into small, distinct units of information, right? So instead of showing 21 things at once, right, you show it in group of threes or in group of fours or in group of fives or in group of sevens, but not greater than 9, because 7 ± 2, right? So the more the chunks of information you add to an interface, the more difficult it becomes to work, right? So you need to make sure that you're not adding too many chunks to the interface, right? It doesn't go beyond 9, right? So you want to keep things as minimalistic as possible, right? So the goal of chunking is that it makes things easier to remember, right? So an example is this phone number, right? Phone number to me just looks like a bunch of numbers. But when it's divided into chunks of threes and fours, like it's easier to comprehend, right? Because there's just space, there's white space, and it just makes it easy to remember, right? So that's a very good example of the Miller's law, right? So yeah, please don't go up and down doing magical number 7 or magical number 7 ± 2, right? People generally misuse this law and they use it to justify a lot of the very, very weird decisions that they make, right? Please don't do that, right? That's not what this law is about. So the next law is Jacob's law. Jacob's law states that users spend most of their times on websites, and they prefer to work they prefer like a site to work the same way as all other sites, right? So what it's basically talking about is mental models, right? So what is a mental model? A mental model is what we as users think we know about a system, right? Especially around like how the system works. So a mental model is an explanation of someone's thought process about how something works in the real world, and it's based on beliefs, not on facts, right? So a solid example is the trash can. So a lot of you don't know this, but the trash can actually came, like the trash can icon on computer is actually like a representation of, I mean, I feel like a lot of people know that actually in retrospect. But anyway, the trash can on the computer was inspired by like a real life trash can, right? People already know that when I put something in the dustbin, I'm throwing it away, right? So they know that if I put something in the trash can on my computer, then it's gone forever. Same as a shopping cart, right? When you are buying something online, if you see a shopping cart, like if you go into a store, right, you want to get something, physical store, you get a shopping cart, you put everything in the shopping cart, then when you're done, you check it out, and then you get your products after you check out, right? After you pay and check out. That's the same way the online like e-commerce sites are designed, right? So you come in, you pick up whatever it is you want, you put it in your virtual shopping cart, you take it, you go check it out, you pay for it, and after you pay for it, you receive a confirmation, and then you get your product, right? So the reason they did that is to align with the mental model of the users, because users already know that, oh, okay, like I do, like if I go into a physical store, I'll go here and here and here. So they expect the online platform to work that way. Same goes for different products, right? If I'm using, I don't know if I really call PiggyVest and CarryWise competitors, but okay, let me use bank. So if I'm using like Zenith Bank, and if I have accounts in Zenith Bank and Diamond Bank, I expect the transferring money process to be the same across those banks, right? Like, so if a bank is doing something weird or doing something funky, like I wouldn't like it's going to confuse me or frustrate me or piss me off, right? Because I already have a mental model about how I send money. So I already have a way that I expect things to be, right? So a pitfall about mental model is that it can impede innovation, right? So you have to take mental models with a grain of salt. Your job as a designer is to decide what mental models to keep and preserve and what mental models to teach your users, right? So an example is Airbnb, right? Airbnb does not align with our mental model. We personally, generally, as human beings, we do not encourage talking to strangers. We don't encourage, you know, staying with strangers, not talk about living with strangers and paying them to live in their house. Like it doesn't align with their mental model, right? It doesn't align with our mental model as users. Even Uber, like it doesn't align with our mental model. Just like entering a random car with somebody that you've never met before, align somebody that you never met before, know your house, right? It's different with cab services because most of them, they work under an actual company, so there's like some level of security, right? But those companies taught us a new mental model, right? So now going to an Airbnb is very normal. Like nobody sees a big deal in it, right? Now people call Uber anytime, right? They don't see a big deal in it because those companies taught us a new mental model, right? And they innovated, right? They had to, break the old mental models and teach us a new one. And that's how, like, they're excelling in whatever it is that they're doing, right? So you have to be very, very careful with mental models. You can't just bring new mental models anyhow, right? But it's also important for you to not just take every mental model, right, and preserve everything. You need to know what mental models to preserve and what mental models to teach, what new mental models to introduce, right, as you innovate in your product. Um, the fourth one is the aesthetic usability effect, right? So the aesthetic usability effect states that users often perceive aesthetically pleasing designs as more usable. Basically, what that means is that people tend to see attractive design products as more usable, even though it's not the case, right? In my experience, I've personally had experiences where I'll be doing user research and people will be struggling with the product. And I would just ask, like, oh, and after like I watch them go through the task, I would ask, oh, what's your overall feeling around that experience? And they would say, oh, the design was so nice, everything was so seamless, I really liked it. And I have recording of them struggling through the like task. Like they like so when those kind of things happen, right, you need to be very conscious to know that, oh, this has to be an aesthetic usability effect, right? Because the design is beautiful, they tend to forget the fact that they struggled with the website and they focus only on the beauty of the site, right? And that can be very, very problematic for you as a designer or as a researcher, right? You need to be able to know the difference. And a more problematic thing about the aesthetic usability effect is the fact that the users will now begin to blame themselves, right? So they'll say, "Oh, I couldn't use this because I'm just so dumb," or "I don't think this product was made for people like me, right? It's really pretty, I like it, but I don't think it was made for people like me." When they begin to blame themselves, then you are like really like you are doing something wrong, right? So we have to be very, very cautious to, identify when people are like, being affected by this aesthetic usability effect, right? And I think one thing that we can take in practice is to focus a lot on functionality, right? Aesthetics is great, aesthetics is beautiful, but don't let aesthetics take precedence over functionality. Aesthetics and functionality go hand in hand, right? Don't let one overtake the other, right? Then the last but not the least, we have color psychology. My color psychology is not really a theory, but it's a psychological something. So I thought it was worth talking about, right? So what color psychology is basically saying is that colors carry meaning, right? Colors matter, right? colors affect the emotions of users. So you cannot just use any color anywhere, right? So it's actually been scientifically proven that it takes 90 seconds for a customer to form an opinion about a product. And 90% of the time, the opinion is influenced by the colors, right? So it's obvious that colors have like a cognitive and emotional impact on people, right? Um, so while specific humans have specific mental models around color, there are some very generic mental models, right? So it's very important for you to make sure that you're choosing the color that aligns with your brand. But it's also very important for you to know the cultural nuances between about like the colors that you use. A color like green in China, I think green in China means bad luck, right? But you see green in like the US, and it's a good thing, like it means good luck, right? So you need to be able to know what color to use in different contexts. Like in the African culture, red is generally a bad color. Red and black is a horrible combination. It means you're the devil, right? So if you're designing a product for native like Africans, right, native Nigerians, like you cannot use red and green. You will run into issues. They will not use your product. Like what they say is the devil's product, right? So it's very, very important for you to, consider those things as you build stuff, right? So a color like blue is associated with the sky, and it reminds you of peace, of serenity, of trust, of devotion. And it's commonly used by financial institutions because people see it as trustworthy, as dependable, as secure, right? So bringing it home, PiggyVest uses blue, CarryWise is blue, Paystack is blue, Twitter is blue, Facebook is blue, right? So try and just do the mental association, right? So a color like red depicts aggressiveness, liveliness, stimulation, and it really grabs your attention. So if you want to induce like a passionate response, use red, right? But red also indicates danger and indebtedness. So you have to be very, very careful, right? Some popular brands that use red, Ferrari, Coca-Cola, CNN, Netflix, right? Um, and then I guess I can talk about green, right? So green is linked to nature, peace, well-being, freshness, right? So Android uses green, Glow uses green, Dettol uses green, Animal Planet uses green, right? You know, color psychology should be taken with a grain of salt too, right? So like it really depends. But for the most part, there are just some very, very staple things about some specific colors, right? So it's always very good to know those things as you decide on, what your brand guidelines would be, what your color palette would be, and all those funky things as you design, right? So in summary, okay, I put this here just, I don't know, because I thought it was really nice to look at. Yeah, some popular brands and the colors that they use. So um in summary, colors matter. Make sure that you know that you do some research into like the colors, and you make sure you make sure you target, like you align specific colors with specific demographics, right? Psychology, second thing is that psychology is useful, right? Psychology is important. It can be really useful in helping you become a better designer, right? The third thing is to keep things simple. Life is not that hard. Don't do too much, right? The simpler the better, right? The fourth thing is informed decision making. Make sure that people have enough information, that they have all the information that they need to make the decisions, right? So it's kind of like a balance. You keep things simple, but you make sure that they have the information that they need, right? The fifth thing is chunk things, right? So put things into chunks, right? And don't overdo the chunks. Remember, don't go beyond 7 ± 2 chunks, right? It's, it's madness. Don't do that, right? And the sixth thing is that functionality and aesthetics go hand in hand, right? So one shouldn't take precedence over the other. They're both very, very important, right? So with that, we've come to the end of the second module. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, we have a couple of questions from YouTube. So I will take the ones from YouTube. Okay. Shago Samuel says, who does the research person, sorry, who does the research? The person doing the design. So like, does that mean that the person doing design has to do the research, or the designer just makes the use of the data derived from the design? Did you get that?
Um, I oh, sorry. So you
Should I take it again?
yes, please. I was distracted.
Okay, so the first line is, what does the research, sorry, who does the research? The person doing the design, or the designer makes use of the design, makes use of the data derived from the design. So,
So it really depends on how things are structured in your company. If you have a researcher, and the researcher does the research, right? But if you don't have a researcher, if you're a product designer, you should be able to do some level of research, right? So um yeah, that's just really what it is, right? You should be able to do, like, you need to have the fundamental knowledge of research. You should need to be able to know, throw out like a survey or do interviews. These are very, very fundamental things. Usability testing, right? Desirability test, right? They're very, very fundamental things. They're not too crazy, right? So yeah, did I answer the question? Did I answer the question?
yeah, I think yeah, you did.
Okay,
Yes, you
okay.
did. So somebody wanted to ask over here. Somebody unmuted himself. Anybody else have a question? You could type in your question also. If you are shy or you're in a noisy place, just type it in. But please, if you have a question, you could ask. Anybody?
No questions.
Okay.
I wasn't really expecting questions for this section anyway. It was just a bunch of
Yeah.
laws, so it's fine. All right, so third module. Wow, time is go. Oh, okay, I have to change it because I was just pressing, like, it wasn't going anywhere. So weird. Humans are so weird. Just give me 1 minute. Probably should have done that before. Hmm. The right one, right? Okay, service design. Great. No, no, no copy. I copied. Did it work? Wait, it didn't work. Okay. Sorry, you guys. I changed my old computer. I think that was a very bad decision. Let's just be patient. Man, this thing is really taking its time. Wow. All right. Service design. Okay, so lesson three, we're almost done. We have, I think, I don't know, 3 more lessons to go, I guess. Um, so I know I threw a lot of information your way, but that's low key the point of a bootcamp, right? So you get a lot of information and then you just figure out what to do with it yourself. Um, so yeah, I'm sure you guys have heard of the term service design. And I'm sure a lot of people have no idea what it means, right? So again, I'm assuming zero knowledge. So we're going to start from the basics. Oh yeah, keep it moving, keep it moving. Click on it, right? Okay, so what is service design? The Nielsen Norman Group defines service design as the activity of planning and organizing a business's resources, right? So the resources being the people, the props, and the processes in order to directly improve the employee's experience and indirectly the customer experience, right? So it sounds like a lot of English, but I'll give you an example. So let's think about the process for buying food, right? Think about like a food ordering platform, right? Think about Uber Eats or think about Jumia, right? Jumia Food, right? So a platform like I'll use Uber Eats for as an example. Uber Eats is just like a Canadian, or I think American food ordering, whatever. But it's the same thing as Jumia Food, right? So for a platform like that, when you're designing the app, right, you have to think about the entire context, right? So you need to ask the question, what happens when the user is hungry? What happens when the user realizes that they want to order food? What happens when they order the food? What happens when the food is ready? What happens when they get to the store to pick it up? What happens when they leave the store, right? What happens between when they leave the store and when they get home? What happens when they eat the food, right? So if you're designing for like a platform like Uber Eats, you're not just thinking about the design of the product. You're thinking about the holistic experience, right? And the same goes for, I don't know, like a clothes vendor on Instagram, right? Service design is very, very scalable. You can use it for your personal businesses, right? So when you want to design for like a small business, like a fashion small business, you're thinking, okay, what happens when I'm done with like sewing the clothes? What happens when somebody realizes that they want to buy a dress from me? What happens when they reach out to me? What happens when they pay, right? What happens like after they pay? What happens when they get the clothes? So you're thinking about the entire end-to-end experience. Your product is only one part of that experience, right? There is more to it, right? I'm going to keep saying there's more to it. That means that meets the eye, which because I mean it's the title of my presentation, I guess. But yeah, right. So when you're designing stuff like that, you have to think about the holistic experience. You have to think about what makes the entire service up. You need to think about the before and the after. You need to think about every single touch point that the user interacts with, right? Because the app is only one of those many touch points, right? So that's basically what service design is all about, right? So come on. I click next, right? Okay. Right. So yeah, from this example, it's obvious that designing the app is only one part of the experience. You have to think about the entire experience. So I tend to just speak ahead of myself. So what's the difference between service design and product design? I'll tell you that. So the service design is different from product design, but it includes product design, right? Think about the example I just gave you. The product design part, the app, is part of the entire experience, but there are other parts, there are other touch points, right? So what's the difference between service design, user experience, and then customer experience? UX is product or service specific, right? It refers to the user's experience with the navigation, the usability, and interface design of a specific product or service. Customer experience is broader. So it talks about the user or customer's experience with all channels and products within the same brand, right? So we are thinking about customer support. We're thinking about customer service team. We're talking about, the user experience when they're trying to purchase it with the sales team. We are thinking about how the user interacts with the marketing team or the products that the marketing team produces. Like you're thinking about the entire thing. You're not just thinking about, just your product, right? And so service design is even bigger than that, right? Because it considers every single interaction across every single channel, across every single touch point, not only from the customer perspective, but also from the organizational perspective. So I've said touch points a bunch of times. I'm going to define what the touch point is. A touch point is basically a single point of interaction between a customer and a service. So an app is a touch point, right? A pamphlet, a flyer is a touch point, right? Because the customer is interacting with the service, right? They haven't what's the word? They haven't used the service yet. They haven't solicited. It's not solicited. I'm looking for. Anyway, there's a word I'm looking for. I can't remember it. But they haven't. It's in my head. Gosh, damn it. Okay, they haven't used the service, right? So, but they've interacted with the service through a flyer, they interacted with the service through a poster, they interacted with the service through, a tweet. They saw a tweet on Twitter about, telling you to go and buy balls. I don't know, somebody that sells basketball, right? So that's a touch point, right? So service design thinks about the entire thing, right? Even physically. So if you're going into, I don't know, a place like ShopRite or Spars, right? Going to like a mall, right? Or you're going to the Nike store, right? The person, the customer, like the sales rep there is a touch point, right? So you're thinking about both the human, the non-human, the physical, the inanimate, everything, every single thing that the users interact with, right? It's a touch point, right? So yeah. So I still want to define service design a bit more because I feel like the initial definition I gave was like a bit too complex, right? So a couple of simpler definitions. The first is that service design is about making the service you deliver useful, usable, efficient, effective, and desirable, right? Another is that service design is designed for experiences that happen over time and across different touch points. My favorite is the third one. So when you have two coffee shops right next to each other, selling the exact same coffee at the exact same price, service design is what makes you walk into one and not the other. And then you come back often to that same place and then you tell your friends about it, right? That's service design, right? So why should I care about service design, right? I'm sure you're wondering, like, this is like user experience design. Why are you talking to me about service design? Um, a lot of reasons why I should care about service design. Move now. Yes. So service design is useful because it focuses on solving the right problem, framing the problem or opportunity in the right way, right? So service design usually starts by investigating the needs of the users. It's very inquiring, very inquisitive, and it uses qualitative research methods to explain the how and why of the space. So it allows you understand the needs and really understand the space instead of just jumping straight into a solution, right? Because understanding the problem is really what makes innovation possible, right? But that's honestly not the main reason why I'm emphasizing it. The main reason I'm emphasizing it is because service design is useful not only to the customers but to the organization, right? So it's useful internally, right? So true service design will expose a lot of the incompetencies and the disconnect within your organizational structure, and it can help you realign your organization with your users' goals, right? And that's really why it's important, because what I've noticed from my experience is that some of the problems with people's products is not caused by, like, it's not really a poor user experience problem. It's not really a poor visual design problem. The root of the problem is the organizational structure, right? A lot of the major banks in Nigeria, they have some of the most talented designers and developers I've ever met in my life, but their app is still trash, right? So that just makes it very obvious that it's not just about the talent, like it's about the organizational structure. There's something wrong with the organizational structure, right? Either somebody is not focusing on design enough, or there are a lot of red tape, a lot of red tape, or there's a lot of push, but there's something within that organization that is reflecting in the app, right? So you with product design, you can't really know that. Like if you're thinking about user experience design, you won't really be able to identify those things. But service design would allow you to identify those things, right? So yeah, before we go further, I want us to talk about what service design is not, right? So service design is not aesthetics, right? The primary focus of service design is not on aesthetics. Service design is more concerned with functionality, right? So you're asking the question, how does the service work? Does the service fulfill a need and create value? Does the service do the things that we expect it to do, right? Your focus is not on the front end or on the usability, right? Your focus is on how the service is delivered and how the service is experienced, and if the service should even exist at all, right? So it goes beyond the visible, right? The second is that service design is not customer service, right? Customer service is a part of service design, but a service designer would spend his or her time understanding customer needs and how customer service and how the customer service unit is performing, right? And even how the customer service unit fits into the organizational structure, right? But they don't focus on, like, it's not customer service, right? And thirdly, service design is not service recovery, right? So it doesn't, service design doesn't only matter when things go wrong, right? So the service design really addresses the entire user journey. So if you remember our Uber Eats or Jumia Food example, you see that the service design starts from the point where the user becomes aware of their need. So when they be like, for in our example, that would be when the user becomes hungry, right? To when the user becomes a regular customer or when they end the relationship. So in our use case, in our example, that would be when they finish eating the food and they're satisfied, right? So you see that it's bigger than you think, right? Um, so a major reason why I personally love service design is because it's holistic. It forces you to think outside your product. A lot of times we get too into our product, like, oh, okay, the app I'm designing, the thing I'm designing, and you don't think about the other, like, you don't think about the holistic user journey, right? Service design is very useful for that. Like, so it leverages design, right? It allows you to think about the holistic experience, right? So you're not just on specific product, you're focused on the entire thing, right? Um, Then, okay. So, what are some of the major principles of service design? I'll go over it really quickly. It's human centered. So, you have to consider the experiences of, like, the people affected by the service. The humans and their humanity should be at the center of the process, right? So, it's collaborative, right? So, it's done by stakeholders from different backgrounds, right? And so it's not only for designers, right? People, you have to bring people from other departments, people from marketing, engineering, sales, customer service. They should all be part of the process, right? Because it goes beyond your product, right? The third is iterative. Service design is exploratory, it's adaptive, and it needs to continuously be improved on, right? As does almost everything in design, right? Then it's sequential. So the sequence is important. The sequence of occurrence, like what comes first, what comes after. Those, like, the order is very, very important, right? The fifth is that it's real, right? So the needs should be, like, researched in reality, right? You need to actually research stuff, actually prototype stuff, right? You don't just, go into your hole somewhere and think of something and come out with it. You need to. So service design is actually it's a value co-creation method where you create the products, like you create a solution with the users. So you as a designer, you're working with the users to ideate the solution, right? And then it's holistic. Again, it addresses the need of all stakeholders and it encompasses all things, right? So quickly, some of the service design tools, the customer journey map. So it's used to visualize the experience of a person from one point to another. The service blueprint. The service blueprint is useful. It's a diagram that shows, like, the entire process of the service delivery, right? And it lists every single stage that, like, stuff is happening and who is happening with and what's going on, right? The third is service safari. So it's a tool that helps designers, develop interesting insights by experiencing the service in the shoes of the user. So basically, you're basically just not pretending, but you're going to just, like, experience the service or the product in the shoes of the user. So you would use it like a normal, like you're just an everyday user, right? It's very, very important or it's very, very useful for building empathy, right? So you really see things through the lens of the user. Then ecosystem map, it's, a synthetic representation capturing the key roles. So it captures, like, the key roles of people that have the influence on the user, that have influence on the organization and on the service environment, on the entire environment, right? Then there's card sorting that is used to understand mental models and form better information architecture and understand how people structure information. So in the next two modules, we'll be talking about research plans, value proposition, business model, and all that. So why did I spend time talking about service design? Because there's a real need for it, especially in emerging economies like in Nigeria. Service economy and also, like, service economies in the West, right? So services are poorly designed, right? and we need to fix that, right? I can remember I held like a clubhouse room where I was asking people about their worst service experience, like their worst customer service experience, their worst experience at at the Nigerian company, like a Nigerian business. And I heard stuff, like I heard a lot of stuff, right? So we need to, start like figuring out ways to solve those things, right? And service design makes you a better problem solver because it allows you to think about the bigger picture, right? And the core job of a designer is to solve problems. It also forces you to remove yourself from the product, right? And to be more intentional as a designer, right? There's a lot of things that I did not get to talk about, but I really hope that this introduction to service design is useful to somebody here. And I hope that it's ignites the curiosity of somebody, and somebody just like goes and does some research and tries to do something with this, because it's very, very useful. It's like a very, very desired skill. Like it's a very, very it's a skill that that is required in the industry, or that is highly coveted in the industry. That's the word, right? So it's very important to have that, right? Or it'd be nice if you had that skill, right? So I already talked about this. So yeah, end of the third module. Does anyone have any questions? Man, I feel like I'm just really, really talking.
But the talking is very insightful. Like for me now, I've learned a lot that I did not know before.
Yeah, I'm
Uh,
glad.
Anybody have a question?
Oh,
Good evening.
Yes.
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
okay.
Let's take Anifuwishi first. And I am Ide.
Good evening.
Good
Amy.
evening.
So is it compulsory for you to make okay, so for example, if you're designing a product and you
Mm-hmm.
have the website view and you have the app view, is it compulsory for you to make the same design for both views? Because there can be some colors you use on the website that might be too concentrated on the app view or something like that. So is it
Um,
compulsory to make the same design?
so it's very important for it to be uniform. You can't have the same platform looking at two different things, right? So if there's something on the mobile that looks weird on web, it's something that will look nice on mobile but looks weird on web, then you need to find something else, right? There's always something else, right? Don't go around, because that's how um chaos starts. What you want is uniformity. You want people to be able to enter your site without, like, if they remove all the like logo and all the this thing, you want people to be able to enter your site and say, oh, I'm on Zenith Bank's app, or oh, I'm on Access Bank's app, right? So it's very, very important for you to um it's very, very important for you to have that, right? So I would say that, like, try your best to make sure everything is as uniform as possible, right? If there's going to be any difference, it needs to be very, very, like, it has to be very unnoticeable, right?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay. Can we have Amity?
Yes. There are so many aspects of design, and we spoke about some during the class. As a newbie coming into the design world, is there any blueprint to follow, or any rule to follow that will let you know, okay, you'll be better off as a product designer than as a service designer, or you'll be better off as a user experience research designer than as a service designer? Or is this something you have to discover within yourself over time?
So a good way to figure out where your strength might lie, to know what your strengths are. So I had an econ background. I was very good economist. Like, I was a very good economist. And what made me a very good economist was my ability to work well with data, to work well with, like, with words, right? I know how to deduce things, right? So me knowing that those were like my key points, like my strengths areas. I don't know why I'm saying rubbish. I've not slept, so I'm sorry. But knowing that those parts were my areas of strength, it really allowed me to focus on, like, I knew that, like, visual design wasn't really it for me, right? I already knew, like, I was just doing it for fun. So, but I knew that because of, like, the knowledge I have, like, I'm really good working with data, I'm really good with deducing things, and I love it. Like, I love doing those things, right? I love talking to people. I love understanding people. So it only made sense for me to move closer to the user experience side, right? Focus a bit more on user research, right? But I'll tell you to start out doing everything and then just test. Make sure you're testing different waters. That's something I tried. Right. I tried working on information architecture. I tried working on an information architecture project. I tried, doing some user research. I was a product designer, so I had to do user research, right? Then I did some, UX strategy work. I did some service design work, and I realized which ones I preferred, which ones that like came easily to me, and which ones I naturally enjoyed, and I was just naturally good at. And that's how I decided to specialize, right? So I would advise you to take the generalist approach and then try different things within design, right? And then find your niche, or you can just highlight your key strengths and look for the parts of design that aligns with your key strengths and specialize there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we have some questions on YouTube. We have two questions. You mentioned that product design is a branch of service design. So why do people who obviously do the latter refer to themselves as product designers?
So people that do service design, they refer to
Yeah,
themselves as product
uh,
designers.
yeah.
That's a very, very, I don't know why they would do that,
I think it's
because
it's more of a bias.
yeah, it's a really,
There is.
because
Mhm.
go ahead,
Listen,
go ahead.
I think there's no tag as called service designers compared to product designers. Like the new wave of how most UI UX designers have started calling themselves product designers.
Right.
Okay. So like there's no popular quote unquote tag for service
True.
designers. So I think that's
Yeah,
one
I
part.
think, yeah. But if you see a service designer calling themselves a product designer, then they must know how to do visual design. They must know
Exactly.
how to do prototyping. They must know how to do those key things, right? If they can't do those key things, then they are not really product designers, right? I mean, I cannot call myself a product designer. I used to be, right? But affliction shall not rise again. So I'm a researcher, strategist, and service designer. Nothing more, nothing less.
Okay, so another person asked, okay, Dooms, you talked about service design addressing the values a service or product delivers and not about repairing the mistakes. What
Mhm.
design stack addresses the mistake repairs?
So what I meant was that it's not focused on that part. Like it's part of it, but it's not focused on it. Like that's not like the core part, right? Um, it's just one of those things. It's kind of like the way I was talking about I say high aesthetics. Wow, the way I'm talking about aesthetics, and aesthetics is a part of it, right? It's important, but it's not the core of service design. Service design thinks about the end-to-end experience, thinks about the thing holistically. It focuses on how each part interacts with each other to reach a specific goal, right? So if you're thinking only about the problems, like you will run into error. Right. But I mean, it's a bit tricky. Yeah, if you're thinking only about what is currently wrong with it, you might run into error. It might be very misleading because what you find out is that what you think is the problem is not really the problem. If you dig deeper, you find out that okay, it might be just that the teams are just like siloed, like the teams are separated from each other, or it might be that you know, the organization just sucks. Like the organization structure just sucks, right? And they just need to fix it, right? So doing a deeper dive, right? Super useful. I hope that answers your question. Because
Yeah,
I
I
need
think
to
that's
myself at some point.
yeah, I think Precious wants to ask a question, but
Yeah,
she's
go
Yes,
ahead.
please.
okay.
Yes, please. So thank you so much for the opportunity to put the design boot camp, and thank you so much to me for um I would say the expository modules you've shared. So my question is around complaint management, complaint handling. Would you say it has to be on the service design or user experience as a whole?
You say
Like
confluence management.
complaint,
Complaint.
COMP.
Or complaint
Yes,
management. So
yes.
complaint management is going to be under customer service, right?
Okay,
And the service designer can evaluate the effectiveness of the customer service team, but it's not service design. Do you get? It's one of the
Oh,
roles, right?
okay.
Evaluating, why are people making complaints? What's the process for making complaints? Are they having issues with it? Like, how effective is our current process for making complaints, right? But it's not like service design team is not the complaints management team.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, yeah, you're welcome.
Sorry, I have a question.
Yeah,
Yeah, so this service design stuff you just mentioned now, this is like my first time hearing it.
okay.
Yeah, so I would like to know if you have like other, apart from me just googling service design, do you have books on service design, or do you have like where I can go and just read a bunch of things about service design, just enlighten myself about the topic?
Yes, definitely. Um, you can check out this is service design thinking. I think this is service design thinking. Yeah. There's also this is service design doing, right? They're like super practical books that like give you all the information that you need. I also have a book called Service Design by Pauline Lovely and Reason. So there are a lot of service design books out there. I don't know. I hope you got that though.
Sorry, the name. Can
So
you
it's
type
called
the name?
service design. Okay, yeah, yeah, you can check it.
Ready
All right, thank
in the
you.
chat room. Yeah. Okay, so somebody else asked. Okay, yeah, does anybody else have a question? Okay, so somebody else asked in the comment section, can you consider yourself a service designer? If yes, is there any difference between a product designer and a service designer?
Yeah, definitely. So the product designer focuses more on, again, the app, right? So the digital interface, right? You focus more on, usability, on the design, on all those things. With service designer, you see the app as one point, as just one touch point, right? There are other things, right? So the app is just one part of the entire process. You're thinking about the end to end. As I said, for like the
Mm-hmm.
Uber Eats example, the service designer will be focused on, the usability of the app, on the ease of use, on the aesthetics, and on user experience of the app, of users while using the app. But the service designer will be focused on, oh, what happens when the user is hungry? What happens when they decide to use Uber Eats to get food? What happens when they order the food? So you're thinking about what happens when they get home, when they get the food. What, like, you're thinking about the entire process. So um it's not just one part, right? It's not just the app, right? It's more than that, right? Will I consider myself a service designer? I'll say I dabble in service design, but I wouldn't really consider myself a service designer because I haven't gone deep into it. I do intend on going deep into it in the coming years, but not just now because it's hard.
Wow. I think another thing I've learned so far from this class is that everything has all those service design, product design, all have individual roles to play or important roles to play in building the product. You know, putting the product out there, the service designer is necessary, the product designer is necessary, the visual designer is necessary. So all these specific parts all come together to give you that great product. So it's not just everything has to be on the UI UX designer. So like I think from this
Yeah.
session, Dooms has helped us like demystify it and saying that okay, you don't have to play all the roles. You can specialize in being a service designer and being a UX researcher. So yeah, I think that's really beautiful because me now. I don't know. I don't know where I was going to start learning service design from. But yeah,
Yeah.
and continue. Let me check YouTube.
Okay.
Okay, yeah,
Oh,
let's check the questions.
okay. We're almost at time. Okay. We started late though. Where we
Yeah,
explained.
so we can exactly this is what to say, so we can push it a
Okay.
little further.
All right. So next module is product thinking. I didn't realize how much work this was going to be. Um. So we're getting closer to the end. We're on the fourth module. just and you have more to go, right? So, okay, product thinking. So, why is product thinking part of my module? Because I have interacted with a number of designers in my lifetime, and a lot of people don't understand the product aspect of design, right? A lot of people don't understand business viability or how to solve problems using products, right? So that's what the session is going to be about. So again, I'm assuming zero knowledge, and I'm going to start by defining a product. So a product is any item or service you can sell to serve a customer's need or want, right? So a product can be physical, virtual, or hybrid, right? An example of physical product, clothes, a water bottle. Example of a virtual product, software. An example of a hybrid product, education, right? So a hybrid product has both virtual and physical elements, right? So a product has three core elements: users, technology, and business, and they are all connected. If you think back to our design thinking talk, you would remember that the sweet spot of innovation, we had desirability, viability, and feasibility. We had three V's, yeah. And one desirability was focused on
Feasibility.
users. Feasibility, right? Thank you. The desirability was focused on users, feasibility was focused on technology, and viability was focused on the business, right? So you see those three key players again coming here again, like they're just everywhere, basically, right? So what is product thinking? Naren Katakam defined product thinking as a journey from the problem space of the users to the solution space of the business. So the goal of the journey is to reduce the gap between users and the business by leveraging technology, right? So basically, we can think of product thinking as the gap between the problem space and the solution space. So the core of product thinking is problem solving, right? It's not surprising. What makes a good product person is their ability to think through a problem, considering all the constraints and still arrive at a feasible solution, right? So again, it's not about training designs, right? There is more to being a product designer. You need to understand the product, you need to understand the business, right? Your job as a designer is not to get features or turn features into design. It's to think through a problem and arrive at a solution in form of a product that achieves or that helps customers solve their core needs, right? So if you really, really dig this thing, you realize that users buy our products to solve their problems. They don't buy it because of the cool features. They don't buy it because it's pretty. They don't buy it because it's expensive. They buy it because it solves a problem for them, right? And it could be like an actual problem, it could be a social problem, it could be anything, but it's a problem. Problem is a problem, right? So product thinking basically forces you to shift your focus to problem solving and not features. It forces you to shift your focus to problem solving and not solutions, basically, right? So again, the ultimate goal of a business is to achieve business model fit. Right? I talked about this earlier, and I'm going to define it now. So the long-term goal of product thinking is to achieve product market fit, and the short-term goal is problem solution fit, right? And they build on each other. So you can't achieve product market fit without first achieving problem solution fit, and you can't achieve business model fit without first achieving problem market fit. So in the order that I listed them, right? So the problem solution fit occurs when you have evidence that customers care about the jobs, the pains, and the gains that you're building for. So it happens when customers care about what you're building for, basically. Product market fit happens when you have evidence that your value proposition is actually creating value for customers by easing their pain and creating the gains that they desire. Business model fit occurs when you have evidence that your value proposition is embedded in a profitable and scalable business, right? So we're going to just keep this model fit because it's out of scope. Product market fit is kind of in scope, but our core focus is on problem solution fit, right? So if you want to get like the problem solution fits, your first step is to understand the problem that you're solving, right? So you have to spend a lot of time breaking things down. You have to spend a lot of time understanding everything, right? Or you have to spend a lot of time understanding the users, the context, the environment, the situation. And there are a lot of foundational questions that you can ask, but the four core ones that I think are important is asking about your target audience. So who's your target audience, right? What are their problems? Why are you solving the problem? And how do you intend on solving the problem? So for the person that brought up the question earlier on, this is a very good starting point. Sit the client down and ask, okay, who's your target audience? Right? What's the problem that you're solving, right? Why are you solving the problem? And how do you intend on solving the problem? By the time you get some answers to these questions, you have clarity on like what to do next and where to go next, right? So this is like a very good starting point. So I mentioned jobs to be done earlier on, and I mentioned it because it's a very, very solid methodology for understanding problems, right? So a job is basically a goal that your user wants to accomplish that is independent of your solution. An example, get breakfast on my way to work. I'm not saying, oh, get breakfast on my way to work from McDonald's, or get breakfast on my way to work from like nobody really cares. Like I don't my core job, and I gave the example of my water bottle, right? My core job is to drink water. Nothing else is important to me. If I find a cup that like is safe to have around my computer and that allows me to drink water, I'm going to employ the cup to do the job of allowing me drink water, right? So thinking about the jobs allows you take yourself out of solutions. Like you're not thinking about, oh, I want to be able to take pictures with a camera that is technologically advanced. Like you're not thinking about all that, right? They're focusing on the core job, right? So the solution to this particular job, this get breakfast on my way to work, it could be get breakfast from like I don't know, it could be go to restaurant to buy food, or get food from a vendor, or get food delivered to me at the office. Like there are a lot of possible ways I could solve this job, right? So this allows you to really, really think about the problem, really think about the context, really think about the person that is trying to like achieve the job, really think about what they're trying to do, right? It forces you to be very intentional, right? Because in jobs to be done there, you don't talk about technology, you don't talk about your product, you don't talk about your solution. Your focus is on the problem, right? So jobs to be done is basically about understanding the goals that people want to accomplish and how achieving those goals amounts to progress in their lives. So jobs to be done is not about your product, it's not about your service, not about your brand, right? Instead, on instead of focusing on your own solution, you're like spending time understanding what people want and why it's important to them, right? And jobs to be done is very intentional about making sure that you do not talk about a particular solution, right? So a common saying in jobs theory is that people don't want a quarter-inch drill; they want a quarter-inch hole. With my water bottle, another way of saying that is, oh, people don't want a water bottle; they just want to drink water, right? Like when you think about things like that, forces you to really like it stretches your brain. Like you really need to understand, okay, what is it that they're trying to do? What's the context? Why is it important to them? And how can I help them achieve this job, right? In a way that will allow me make profits, right? So that's product thinking for you, right? So jobs to be done encourages us, or forces us to focus on the outcome and not on the technology, right? So you're focusing on the outcome, on and then you're working your way back to the technology, right? I really love it. It's very simple, it's very effective, right? And it's also very I love it because people tend to get carried away with technology. Small things, small problem, they'll say, oh, we can use AI. Oh, we can do this, we can do that, without fully understanding what the problem is, right? So jobs to be done again allows you to just throw those things aside, and I love it a lot. Another way you can do this is using a lean canvas, lean UX canvas. So a lean UX canvas is a framework for understanding business and user needs by helping the team frame their work as a business problem to solve rather than a solution to implement. So again, they're focusing on the problem, right? Trying to solve the problem as opposed to trying to understand the problem and then solve the problem, as opposed to having a solution and trying to implement the solution, right? So I personally love this canvas because it helps you put everything into perspective, especially if you're working on a new product, right? So it forces you to really sit down and focus on the problems, on the needs, which is a good thing, right? So it forces you to kind of start from the problem as opposed to starting from the solution, which is what a lot of people tend to do, right? And it also helps you see technology as a tool that helps facilitate a solution and not as the solution in itself, right? Which is a mentality that I think a lot of people have right now, and is the reason why people build a lot of weird products nowadays, right? So I know the graph looks a bit overwhelming, but you're not required to know everything. In fact, the first time you fill this canvas, you're not going to know everything, and that's the entire point, right? It shows you what you know, what you think you know, and what you don't know. And I love it because it focuses, like it touches the user side and it touches the technology side to some extent, but it focuses more on the user and the business side of things, right? And once you've tried to fill out this canvas, you realize the gaps in the knowledge that you have, and those gaps can stand as the starting point for your research, right? So you just do research. Like once you identify those gaps, those things that you don't know, do some research on it, get some clarity. Then you come back, you fill the canvas again. Then you just continue iterating until like you get to a good place, right? So it's very, very useful. Me, I love it a lot, right? And the reason I recommend this is also because it helps you and your team align. Like it helps you and your team start first of all with the user-centric mindset. So you're thinking about the user. A lot of the things there's talking about, you know, the business problem or the user outcome. So the users or the user outcomes, right? It's not really talking about technology, it's not really talking about all those things, right? So it's a very user-centric way of building product, right? It also helps you align your team, right? So when everybody gathers and fills it out, you get to patch those knowledge gaps that would normally exist, right? If you believe A, I believe B. If we're filling the canvas together, we have to align. Somebody has to give way, or we have to reach a compromise, right? And aligning early makes it easy to build the product later on. Because if everybody's on the same page, then you won't run into issues. If everybody's on the same page, then like a lot of those clashes that you have, especially with the engineering team, you're not going to have it. Some of those clashes that you have your product managers, you won't have it because you're already aligned, right? So and also it also helps give more clarity and direction, right? So another concept in product thinking I think is worth talking about is a value proposition. So what's the value proposition? So it's a statement that answers the why, like why somebody should do business with you, right? It's the value a company promises to deliver to the customers if they choose to buy their products. So before you came up with the value proposition, you need to have spent time understanding the problem you're trying to solve, right? So the value proposition offers some basic things, some three main things. It offers relevancy, right? So it explains how your product solves customer problems and improves the situation. It provides quantified value, so it delivers specific benefits. It provides differentiation, right? It allows you to tell you the ideal customer. It tells the ideal customer why they should buy from you and not the competition, right? So some of the very cool value propositions that I've seen so far from Lyft, the ride hailing platform, ride in minutes. Very simple, very straightforward. You know what they're doing, you know what they do. They provide rides and they provide it quickly, right? Minutes, so you can just like call anywhere and all that, right? It's very simple, very straightforward, very informative. And next is Evernote, remember everything. So you know that okay, they are trying to help me not forget things, right? So there's this place of documentation. I don't know, like looking at it, you're not really sure what documentation it is, but you know that there's a level of documentation that they will help you maintain, right? To ensure that you don't forget things. And there'll be a lot of measures put in place to make sure that you don't forget things, right? So if your goal is not to forget things and you see this value proposition, then you would officially like you would be bought you'd be bought on the idea and you would want to, check out the product. The next is Spotify, music for everyone, very simple and straightforward. So it shows that it's very inclusive, shows that there's everything, there's something for everybody there. So whoever it is I say I am, whoever it is I am, where I'm, no matter where it is I'm from, no matter what it is I carry, like I know that if I go to Spotify, I'll find music that I can vibe to, right? Very simple, very straightforward. Pinterest, the world's catalog of ideas. I know that I can create a catalog of my ideas. If I need a place to brainstorm, if I need a place to think, if I need a place to get creativity, I know I can go to Pinterest, right? Very simple, very straightforward, right? So um, how do you create value proposition? An easy way is by using the value proposition canvas, right? And the canvas is a tool that can help businesses ensure that a product or service is positioned around what the customer values and what they need, right? So the canvas helps you provide some understanding of your users and provides clarity around what your solution is and what value it is that you offer as a company, right? So it consists of two sections: the customer profile, right? So in that section, you profile the customer by asking what jobs they are trying to accomplish, what is hard or unpleasant about the way they are currently doing things, what is desirable or delightful about in an ideal solution, right? And then the second part is value proposition. And in that section, you want to understand what the product or service is, how your product or service creates the gains that the customer wants, and how it relieves the pain. So you're basically matching things to another. You're matching the jobs that you're trying to accomplish to the products that you provide. You're matching what is hard or unpleasant about the way they're currently doing things to how you can create gains that they want. You're matching what is desirable or thoughtful about the solution to how it relieves pain, right? The pains that they don't want, right? So this is what it looks like actually. It's really cool. And you see it's like again it matches each other here, and then here, right? Um yeah, so I'm just brushing over that really quickly. So in summary, um I know I said a lot of things, but what I really want to emphasize is just that problem solving is important, and being able to think about a problem, being able to think about the users and the business is very very important as a designer, right? It takes some time, right? It takes some time to understand the problem, but it makes things easy, right? Product thinking enables designers also ask the right questions because you understand what it is you're doing, you understand the situation, you understand the context, you understand the environment, so you know what to do, right? You have some idea on what direction to take, right? And then the third thing is that product thinking gives designers the advantage of building the right features, right? If you know what to do, if you understand your problem, and if you ask the right questions, you get the right answers, you get the right insights that you can use to build your products. It's a chain, the value chain, right? That's just kind of how it goes, right? So yeah, that's it from me. Does anyone have any questions? What time is it? Ooh,
No, it's just 6:02.
okay.
Any question, guys? Any questions so far from this last module? Let me check YouTube. Okay, we have none from YouTube. So any
Wow.
question?
You
Yeah, I
want to
think
take a
this.
break?
It's
Navigate.
like someone was like, "This is a lot." So guys,
Lol, yeah.
the slides will be provided to you like after the boot camp, so that you can go back and carefully digest everything. And the video is up on YouTube also. So if you also need to go back and listen to the class again and digest everything, like everything is made available for you. I hope that's fine. So I'm sure almost everybody has liked it a lot. So I just want to
Yeah.
quickly add something to help some people, because before the class, I had some people ask me about like user research. Because at the time I made a tweet where I said I'm really just a user interface designer that knows UX, and that called for like a lot of questions, because I would say user interface design, the research part is very stressful. It's not stressful, but it is it is you have to be very intentional, yeah, because you are handling people's lives, you are handling people's psychology, you're handling people's minds. You want to configure people to react a certain way to your product. Like that is a lot of work this. So I would sometimes I just always run away from it, but I realized that as a user interface designer or a UI UX designer, it is important to understand your users. Those are the people we are trying to reach out to. We are trying to solve their pain points. So imagine you don't know their pain points and you are trying to solve a problem. What's the point? Yeah.
Right.
Pinpoint those points. So yeah, I love the fact that you debunked the whole ideology of the ideate. I don't even know it because I don't follow it
Vibes.
either.
Vibes and
So
vibes.
Vibes and vibes. I don't even follow that either. Another thing that I would say I always tell a lot of young designers is that learn to task your clients. Like the people you are creating the app for, learn to ask them questions, learn to communicate. If you don't understand something, if you have researched it and you found out that okay, this is like from the client side, don't be afraid to ask them questions. I know a lot of clients that I always ask for their link canvas and they tell me they don't have it. And I send it to them. I'm like, okay, please fill this so that I can get a better glimpse on what you are trying to solve and the type of people you are trying to reach out to. So learn to task your clients, learn to ask questions, There are a lot of designers out there that are willing to help. So like even if you don't understand something, learn to reach out, learn to ask. Don't think you are doing this on your own. I think that's one reason why I started this boot camp to form a community here in Nigeria where you understand you're not doing it alone. There is transparency. We're not trying to hoard information. We're not palliatives. But yeah, I hope with this amazing class, everybody has learned a whole lot. And I'm so grateful. I would say, I love you, and I'm not going to stop saying it because this has really opened my mind to a lot, to like a whole lot. And I'm going to go back to YouTube and I'm going to watch everything again to dissect the information very well. So yeah, guys. So there was any other thing you want to say?
Oh, I muted myself, sorry. Yes. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Um, I have a user research module, but I'll teach it in the next session.
Yay!
So yeah. So if there's anything that you want me to address in the next session, please let me know. Like send me a DM, send me a message, send Better like a message, so that I can create a plan, like a creative study stuff. Because I think a lot of like I really struggled to figure out what to talk about because just like so much to talk about. So
Yeah,
if you guys can be specific about what you really need, so I can tailor like the next class to that, right?
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, thank you so much, everyone. This was really
So
fun.
that guys, based on what James has said on our WhatsApp group, just drop every topic that you probably want her to touch, or questions that you have. Just drop it in the group chat, and our community manager will collate everything and will address it in the next class. So, so definitely, next class is something you shouldn't miss. Also, if you learned anything from today's class, like as usual, please go on Twitter, go on Instagram, go on your WhatsApp status, every social media, and just type out what you learned. So you don't know who needs this. So type out what you learned and with the hashtag Design Bootcamp 2021. So yeah. I love you guys. Also, there's going to be assignments this weekend. So get ready. Make sure you are listening in the class because all the assignments is going to come from this class.